the Krishna book reading in Prabhupada house. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pati Deshiti Namine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Binda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. We are reading from chapter 81, the Brahmana Sudama blessed by Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the super soul of all living entity, knows everyone's heart very well. He is specially inclined to the Brahmana devotees. Lord Krishna is also called Brahmana Deva, Brahmadeva, which means that he is worshipped by the Brahmanas. Therefore, it is understood that a devotee who is fully surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead has already acquired the position of the Brahmana. Without becoming a Brahmana, one cannot approach the Supreme Brahman. Lord Krishna is specially concerned with vanquishing the distress of his devotees, and he is the only shelter of a pure devotee.
Lord Krishna engaged for a long time in talking with Sudama Vipra. Lord Krishna engaged for a long time in talking with Sudama Vipra about their past company of an old friend. Lord Krishna began to smile and asked, "My dear friend, what have you brought for me? Has your wife given you some nice eatable for me?" While addressing his friend, Lord Krishna looking upon him and smiled with great love. He continued, "My dear friend, you must have brought some presentation for me from your home." Lord Krishna knew that Sudama was hesitating to present him with the paltry chipped rice, which was actually unfit for his eating. Understanding the mind of Sudama Vipra, the Lord said, "My dear friend, I am certainly not in need of anything, but if my devotee gives me something as an offering of love, even though it may be very insignificant, I accept it with great pleasure. On the other hand, if a person is not a devotee, even thought he may offer me very valuable things, I do not like to accept them. I actually accept only things offered to me in devotion and love. Otherwise, however valuable a thing may be, I do not accept it. If my pure devotee offers me even the most insignificant things, a little flower, a little piece of a leaf, a little water, but saturate the offering in devotional love, then not only I do gladly accept such an offering, but I eat it with great pleasure.
Lord Krishna assured Sudama Vipra that he would be very glad to accept the chipped rice he had brought from home. Yet out of great shyness, Sudama Vipra hesitated to present it to the Lord. He was thinking, how can I offer such an insignificant thing to Krishna? And he simply bowed his head. Lord Krishna, the Supreme Soul, knows everything. He is everyone's heart. He knows everyone's determination and everyone's want. He knew, therefore, the reason of Sudama Vipra coming to him. He knew that, driven by extreme poverty, he had come there at the request of his wife. Thinking of Sudama as his dear class friend, he knew that Sudama's love for him as a friend was never tainted by any desire of the material benefit. Krishna thought, Sudama has not come asking anything from me. Being obliged by the request of his wife, he has come to see me just to please her. Lord Krishna therefore decided that he would give more material opulences to Sudama Vipra than could be imagined even by the King of Heaven. He then snatched the bundle of cheap rice which was hanging on the shoulder of a poor Brahmana, packed in one corner of his wrapper, and said, What is this, my dear friends? You have brought me nice palatable cheap rice. He encouraged Sudama Vipra, saying, I consider that this quantity of cheap rice will satisfy not only me but the whole creation. It is understood from this statement that Krishna, being the original source of everything, is the root of the entire creation. As watering the root of a tree immediately distributed water to every part of the tree, so an offering made to Krishna or any action done for Krishna is to be considered the highest welfare work for everyone, because benefit of such an offering is distributed through the creation. Love for Krishna is distributed to all living entities.
While Lord Krishna was speaking to Sudama Vipra, he ate one morsel of sipped rice from his bundle, and when he attempted to eat a second morsel, Rukmani Devi, the goddess of fortune herself, checked the Lord by catching hold of his hand. After touching the hand of Krishna, Rukmani said, My dear Lord, this one morsel of cheap rice is sufficient to cause him who offered it to become very opulent in this life and to continue his opulence in the next life. My Lord, you are so kind to your devotee that even this one morsel of the rice pleases you very greatly, and your pleasure assures the devotee opulence in both this life and the next. This indicates that when food is offered to Lord Krishna with love and devotion, and he is pleased and accepts it from the devotee. Rukmani Devi, the goddess of fortune, becomes so greatly obliged to the devotee that she has to go personally to the devotee's home to turn it into the most opulent home in the whole world. If one feeds Narayana sumptuously, the goddess of fortune Lakshmi automatically becomes guest in one's house, which means that one's home becomes opulent. The Lord Brahmana Sudama passed that night at the house of Lord Krishna, and while there he felt as if he were living on a Vaikuntha planet. Actually, he was living in Vaikuntha because wherever Lord Krishna, the original Narayan, and Rukmani Devi, the goddess of fortune, lives in not different from the spiritual planets, Vaikuntha Loka. The Lord Brahmana Sudama did not appear to have received anything substantial from Lord Krishna while at his palace, yet he did not ask anything from the Lord. The next morning he started for his home, thinking always about his reception by Krishna, and thus he marched in transcendental bliss. All the way home he simply remembered the dealings of Lord Krishna, and he felt very happy to have seen the Lord.
The Brahmana thought, it is most pleasurable to see Lord Krishna, who is most devoted to the Brahmanas. How great a lover he is of the Brahminical culture. He is the Supreme Brahman himself, yet he reciprocates with the Brahmanas. He also respects the Brahmanas so much that he embraced to his chest such a poor Brahmana as me. Although he never embraces anyone to his chest except the goddesses of fortune. How can there be any comparison between me, a poor, sinful Brahmana, and the Supreme Lord Krishna? who is the only shelter of the goddesses of fortune. And yet, considering me a Brahmana, with heartfelt pleasure he embraced me in his two transcendental arms. Lord Krishna was so kind to me that he allowed me to sit on the same bedstead where the goddesses of fortune lies down. He considered me his real brother. How can I appreciate my obligation to him? When I was tired, Srimati Rukmini Devi, the goddesses of fortune, began to fan me, holding the chamara whisk in her own hand. She never considered her exalted position as the first queen of Lord Krishna. I was rendered service by the Supreme Personality of Godhead because of his high regard for the Brahmanas, and by massaging my legs and feeding me with his own hand, he practically worshipped me, aspiring for elevation to the heavenly planets, liberation, all kinds of material opulence, or perfection in the powers of mystic yoga. Everyone throughout the universe worships the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Yet, the Lord was so kind to me that he did not give me even a farthing, knowing very well that I am a poverty-stricken man who, if I got some money, might become puffed up and mad after material opulence and so forget him. The statement of the Brahmana Sudama is correct. An ordinary man who is very poor and prays to the Lord for benediction in material opulence, and who somehow or other becomes richer in material opulence, immediately forgets his obligation to the Lord. Therefore, the Lord does not offer opulence to his devotee unless the devotee is thoroughly tested. Rather, if a neophyte devotee serves the Lord very sincerely and at the same time wants material opulence, the Lord gives him from obtaining it.
The statement of the Brahmana Sudama is correct. An ordinary man who is very poor and prays to the Lord for benediction in the material opulences, and who somehow or other becomes richer in material opulences, immediately forgets his obligation to the Lord. Therefore, Lord does not offer opulences to his devotee unless the devotee is thoroughly tested. Rather, it is Nipoti devotee service. The Lord very sincerely and at the same time wants material opulences. The Lord keeps him from the obtaining it. Thinking in this way, the learned Brahmana gradually reached his own home. But there he saw that everything was wonderfully changed. He saw in place of his cottage there were big palace made of valuable stones and jewels, glittering like the sun, moon and rays of fire. Not only were there big palaces, but at an interval there were beautiful decorated parks in which many beautiful men and women were strolling in those parks. There were nice lakes full of lotus flowers and beautiful lanes, and there were flocks of multicolored birds. Seeing the wonderful conversation of his native place, the Brahmana began to think to himself, how I am seeing all these changes. Does this place belongs to me or to someone else? If it is the same place where I used to live, then how was it so wonderfully changed? While the learned Brahmana was considering this, a group of beautiful men and women with features as resembled those of the demigods, accompanied by the musical chanter, approached to welcome him. All were singing auspicious songs. The wife of the Brahmanas was very glad to hearing the tidings of her husband's arrival, and with a great haste she came out of the palace. The Brahmana's wife appeared so beautiful that it seemed as if the goddess of fortune herself had come to receive him. As soon as she saw her husband present before her, tears of joy fell from her eyes, and her voice became so choked up that she could not even address her husband. She simply closed her eyes in anxiety, but with great love and affection, she bowed down before her husband, and within herself she thought of embracing him. She was fully decorated with gold necklace and ornaments. And while standing among the maidservants, she appeared like the demigod's wife, just alighting from an aeroplane. The Brahmana was surprised to see his wife so beautiful and in great affection, and without saying a word, he entered the palace with her.
When the Brahmana entered his personal apartment in the palace, he saw that he was not an apartment. It was not an apartment, but the residence. He saw that it was not an apartment, but the residence of the King of Heaven. The place was surrounded by many columns of jewels. The couches and the bedsteads were made of ivory and bedecked with gold and jewels. And the bedding was as white as the foam of milk and as soft as lotus. There were many whisks hanging from the golden rods, and many golden thrones were sitting cushions as soft as lotus flowers. In various places there were velvet and silken canopies with laces of pearls hanging all around. The structure of the building stood on excellent transparent marbles with engraving made of emerald stones. All the women in the palace carried lamps made of valuable jewels. The flames and the jewels combined to produce a wonderfully brilliant light. When the Brahmana saw his position suddenly changed to one of the opulence, and when he could not determine the cause for such a sudden change, he began to consider very gravely how it had happened. He thus began to think, from the beginning of my life, I have been extremely poverty-stricken. So what could be the cause of such great and sudden opulence? I do not find any cause other than the all-merciful glance of my friend Lord Krishna, the chief of the Yadu dynasty. Certainly there are gifts of Lord Krishna's causeless mercy. Certainly these are the gifts of Lord Krishna's causeless mercy. The Lord is self-sufficient, the husband of goddess of fortune, and thus is always full of six opulences. He can understand the mind of his devotees, and he sometimes fulfills the devotees' desires. All these are acts of my friend Lord Krishna. My beautiful dark friend Krishna is far more liberal than the cloud, which can fill the great ocean with water. Without disturbing the cultivator with rain during the day, the cloud brings liberal rain at night just to satisfy him. And yet, when the cultivator wakes up in the morning, he thinks that it has not rained enough. Similarly, the Lord fulfills the desire of everyone according to his position. Yet one who is not in Krishna consciousness considers all the gifts of the Lord to be less than his desire. On the other hand, when the Lord receives a little thing in love and affection from his devotees, he considers it a great and valuable gift. I am a vivid example of this. I simply offered him a morsel of cheap rice, and in exchange, he has given me opulences greater than those of the King of Heaven.
What the devotee actually offered the Lord is not needed by the Lord, for he is self-sufficient. If the devotee offers something to the Lord, it acts for his own interest, because whatever a devotee offers the Lord comes back in quantity a million times greater than what was offered. One does not become a lorder by giving to the Lord, one becomes a gainer by millions of times. The Brahmana, feeling great obligation to Krishna, thought, I pray to have the friendship of Lord Krishna and to engage in his service and to surrender fully unto him in love and affection, life after life. I did not want any opulence. I only desired not to forget his service. I simply wish to be associated with his pure devotees. May my mind and activities be always engaged in his service. The unborn Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, knows that many great personalities have fallen from their position because of extravagant opulence. Therefore, even when his devotee asks for some opulence for him, the Lord sometimes does not give it. He is very cautious about his devotee. Because a devotee in a immature position of devotional service may, if I afford great opulence fall from its position. Due to being the material world, the Lord does not offer opulence to him. This is another manifestation of the causeless mercy of the Lord upon his devotee. His first interest in that the devotee not fall. He is exactly like a well-wishing father who does not give much wealth into the hand of his immature son. But when the son is grown up and knows how to spend money, gives him the whole treasury house.
The learned Brahmana thus concluded that whatever opulences he had received from the Lord should be used not for his extravagant sense gratification, but for the service of the Lord. The Brahmana accepted his newly acquired opulences, but he did so in a spirit of renunciation, remaining unattached to sense gratification, and thus he lived very peacefully with his wife, enjoying all the facilities of the opulences as the prasadam of the Lord. He enjoyed varieties of food by offering it to the Lord and then taking it as prasadam. Similarly, it by the grace of the Lord, we get such opulences as the material wealth, fame, power, education, and beauty. It is our duty to consider that they are all gifts of the Lord and must be used for his sense service, not for the sense enjoyment. The learned Brahmana remained in that position, and thus his love and affection for Lord Krishna increased day by day, day after day. It did not deteriorate due to great opulences. Materialist opulences can be the cause of degradation and also the cause of elevation, according to the purpose for which it is used. If opulences is used for sense gratification, it is a cause of degradation. And if it is used for the service of the Lord, it is a cause of elevation. It is evident from the Lord Krishna's dealing with Sudama Vipra that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very much pleased with a person who possesses Brahmanical qualities. A qualified Brahmana like Sudama Vipra is naturally a devotee of Lord Krishna. Therefore it is said, Brahmana Vaishnava, a Brahmana is Vaishnava, or sometimes it is used Brahmana Pandit. Pandit means a highly learned person. A Brahmana cannot be foolish or uneducated. Therefore, there are two divisions of Brahmanas, namely Vaishnavas and the Pandits. Those who are simply learned are Pandits, but not yet devotees of the Lord or Vaishnava. Lord Krishna is not specially pleased with them. Simply the qualification of being a learned Brahmana is not sufficient to attract the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Not only must a Brahmana be well qualified according to the requirements stated in the scriptures, such as Srimad Bhagavatam and Srimad Bhagavad-Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, but at the same time, he must be devotee of Lord Krishna. The vivid example is Sudama Vipra. He was qualified Brahmana, unattached to all sorts of material sense enjoyment. And at the same time, he was a great devotee of Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna, the enjoyer of sacrifices and penances, is very fond of Brahmana like Sudama Vipra. And he have seen by the actual behavior of Lord Krishna how much he adores such a Brahmana. Therefore, ideal stage of human perfection is to become a Brahmana Vaishnava like Sudama Vipra.
Sudama Vipra realized that although Lord Krishna is unconquerable, he nevertheless agrees to be conquered by his devotees. He realized how kind Lord Krishna was to him, and he was always in trance, constantly thinking of Krishna. By such constant association with Lord Krishna, whatever darkness of material contamination remained within his heart was completely cleared away, and very shortly he was transferred to the spiritual kingdom, which is the goal of all saintly persons in the perfectional stage of life. Shukadeva Goswami has stated that all persons who hear this history of Sudama Vipra and Lord Krishna will know how affectionate Lord Krishna is to Brahmanas, devotees like Sudama. Therefore, anyone who hears this history gradually is as qualified as Sudama Vipra, and he thus transferred to the spiritual kingdom of Lord Krishna. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of 81st chapter of Krishna, the Brahmana Sudama blessed by Lord Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Chapter 82. Lord Krishna and Balaram met the inhabitants of Vrindavan. Once upon a time, while Lord Krishna and Balaram were living peacefully in the great city of Dwaraka, there was the rare occasion of a full solar eclipse, such as takes place at the end of every kalpa, or day of Brahma. At the end of every kalpa, the sun is covered by a great cloud, and incessant rain covers the lower planetary systems up to Swargaloka. By astronomical calculation, people were informed about this great eclipse prior to its taking place. And therefore, everyone, both men and women, decided to assemble at the holy place in Kurukshetra known as Samanta Panchaka. The Samanta Panchaka pilgrimage site is celebrated because Lord Parshuram performed great sacrifices there after killing all the Kshatriyas in the world 21 times. While Lord Parshuram killed all the Kshatriyas, their accumulated blood flowed like a stream. Lord Parshuram dug 5 big lakes at Samanta Panchak and filled them with this blood. Lord Parshuram is Vishnu Tattva. As stated in Isopanishad, Vishnu Tattva cannot be contaminated by any sinful activity. Yet, although Lord Parshuram is fully powerful and uncontaminated, in order to exhibit ideal character, he performed great sacrifices at Samanta Panchaka to atone for his so-called sinful killing of the Kshatriyas. By his example, Lord Parshuram established that the killing art, although sometimes necessary, is not good. Lord Parshuram considered himself culpable for the sinful killing of Kshatriyas. Therefore, how much more culpable are we for such abominable, unsanctioned acts? Thus, from time immemorial, the killing of living entities is prohibited all over the world.
Taking advantage of the occasion of the solar eclipse, all the important persons from all parts of Bharatvarsha visit the holy place of pilgrimage. Some of the important personalities are mentioned as follow. Among the elderly persons were Akura, Vasudev and Ugarsen, and among the younger generation were Gada, Pradyumna, Samba and many other members of Yadu dynasty who had come there with a view of atone for sinful activities occurred in course of discharging their respective duties. Because almost all the members of the Yadu dynasty went to Kurukshetra, some important personalities like Anuruddha, the son of Pradyumna, and Kathavarma, the commander-in-chief of the Yadu dynasty, along with Suchundra, Sukha and Sarana, remained in Dwarka to protect the city. All the members of Yadu dynasty were naturally very beautiful. Yet on the occasion when they appeared duly decorated with gold necklace and flower garlands, dressed in valuable clothing and properly armed with their respective weapon. Their natural beauty and personality were 100 times enhanced. The members of the Yadu dynasty came to Kurukshetra in their gorgeously decorated chariot, which resembled the aeroplane of the demigod, and which were plugged by big horses and that moved like the waves of ocean. Some Yadus rode on the sturdy silver elephant that moved like the clouds in the sky. Their wives were carried on a beautiful palanquins by beautiful men, whose features resembled those of the Vidyadhars. The entire assembly looked as beautiful as an assembly of the demigod in heaven. After arriving in Kurukshetra, the members of Yadu dynasty took their bath ceremonially and self-controlled as enjoined in the Shastras, and they observed fasting for the whole period of eclipse in order to nullify the reaction of their sinful activities. Since it is a Vedic custom to give a charity as much as possible during the hours of eclipse, the members of Yadu dynasty distributed many hundreds of cows in charity to the Brahmanas. All those cows were fully decorated with nice dress and ornaments. The special features of these cows was that they had golden ankle belts and flower garlands on their neck. After the eclipse, all the members of the Yadu dynasty again took their bath in the lakes created by Lord Parshuram. Then they simultaneously fed the Brahmana with first-class cooked food as all prepared in butter. According to the Vedic system, there are two classes of food. One is called raw food and the other is called cooked food. The raw food does not indicate the raw vegetables and raw grains, but food boiled in water, whereas cooked food is made in ghee. Chapati, dal, rice and ordinary vegetables are called raw food, as are the fruits and the salads. But puris, kachoris, samosas, sweet balls and so on are called cooked food. All the Brahmana invited on the occasion by the members of the Yadu dynasty fed simultaneously with the cooked food.
The ceremonial functions performed by the members of the Yadu dynasty externally resemble the ritualistic ceremonies performed by the Karmis. When a Karmi performs some ritualistic ceremony, his ambition is sense gratification, good position, good wife, good house, good children, and good wealth. But the ambition of the member of the Yadu dynasty was different. Their ambition was to offer Krishna perpetual devotion with faith. All the members of the Yadu dynasty were great devotees. As such, after many births of the accumulated pious activities, they were given the chance to associate with Lord Krishna. In going to take their baths in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, in observing the regulative principles during the solar eclipse, or in the feeding the Brahmanas, in all their activities, they simply thought of devotion to Krishna. Their ideal worshipable Lord was Krishna and no one else. After the Brahmanas are fed, it is a custom for the host, with their permission, to accept prasadam. Thus, with the permission of the Brahmanas, all the members of the Yadu dynasty took lunch. Then they selected resting places underneath the big shady trees. And when they had taken sufficient rest, they prepared to receive visitors, among whom were relatives and friends, as well as many subordinate kings and rulers. They were the rulers of the Matsya province, Ushinara province, Koshala province, Vidarbha province, Kuru province, Shrunjaya province, Kambhaja province, Kekaya province, Madras province, Kunti province, Anartha province, Kerala province, and many other countries and provinces. Some of the rulers belonged to opposing parties and some were friends. But above all, the visitors from the Vrindavan were most prominent. The residents of Vrindavan, headed by Nanda Maharaj, had been living in great anxiety because of separation from Krishna and Balrama. Taking advantage of the solar eclipse, they all came to see their life and soul, Krishna and Balram.
The inhabitants of Vrindavan were well-wishers and intimate friends of the Yadu dynasty. This meeting of the two parties after long separation was a very touching incident. All the Yadus and the residents of Vrindavan felt such great pleasure in meeting and talking together that it was a unique scene. Meeting after long separation, they were all jubilant. Their hearts throbbed and their faces appeared like freshly bloomed lotus flowers. Drops of tears fell from their eyes. The hair under their bodies stood on end, and because of their extreme ecstasy, they were temporarily speechless. In other words, they dove into the ocean of happiness. While the men were meeting in that way, the women also met one another in the same manner. They embraced one another in great friendship, smiling very mildly, and looked at one another with much affection. When they were embracing one another in their arms, the saffron and kumkum spread on their breasts was exchanged from one person to another, and they all felt happy ecstasy. Due to such heart-to-heart embracing, torrents of tears glided down their cheeks. The juniors were offering obeisance to the elders, and the elders were offering their blessing to the juniors. They thus welcomed one another and asked after one another's welfare. Ultimately, however, all their talks was only of Krishna. All the neighbors and relatives were connected with Lord Krishna's pastimes in this world. And such Krishna was the center of all their activities. Whatever activities they performed, social, political, religious, or conventional, were transcendental. The real elevation of human life rests on knowledge and renunciation. As stated in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, devotional service rendered to Krishna automatically produces perfect knowledge and renunciation. The family members of the Yadu dynasty and the cowherds of Vrindavan had their minds fixed on Krishna. That is the symptom of perfect knowledge. And because their minds were always engaged in Krishna, they were automatically freed from all material activities. This stage of life is called Yukta Vairagya. As uninitiated by Srila Rupa Goswami, knowledge and renunciation therefore do not mean dry speculation and renunciation of activities. Rather, one must start speaking and acting in relationship with Krishna.
In this meeting at Kurukshetra, Kunti Devi and Vasudev, who were sister and brother, meet after long separation, along with their respective sons and daughter-in-laws, children and other family members. By talking among themselves, they soon forgot all their past miseries. Kunti especially addressed her brother Vasudev as follows: "My dear brother, I am very unfortunate because not one of my desire has been fulfilled. Otherwise, how could it happen that although I have such a saintly brother as you, perfect in all respects, you did not inquire from me as to how I was passing my days in a distress condition of life?" It appears that Kunti was remembering the miserable days when she had been banished with her sons through the mischievous plan of Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. She continued, "My dear brother, I can understand that when providence goes against one, even one's nearest relatives forget him. In such a condition, even one's father, one's mother, or one's own children will forget him. Therefore, my dear brother, I do not accuse you. Vasudev replied to his sister, "My dear sister, do not be sorry and do not blame me in that way. We should always remember that we are only toys in the hands of Providence. Everyone is under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is under His control only that all kinds of fruitive action and their reactions take place. My dear sister, you know that we were very much harassed by King Kamsa, and by his prevention we were scattered here and there. We were always full of anxiety. Only in last few days have we returned to our own place by the grace of God." After this conversation, Vasudev and Ugrasen received the king who came to see them, and they warmly welcomed them all. Seeing Lord Krishna present on the spot, all the visitors felt transcendental pleasure and became very peaceful. Some of the prominent visitors were as follow: Bhishmadev, Dronacharya, Dhritarashtra, Duryodhan, Gandhari, along with her sons, King Yudhishthira, along with his wife, and the Pandavas, along with Kunti, as well as Sanjaya, Vidura, Kripacharya, Kunti Bhoja, Virta, Bhishmaka, King Nagarjit, Purjit, Drupada, Slaya, Dhritarashtra, Dushrakestu, the king of Kasi, Damodar Ghosh, Vishakas, the king of Mithila, the king of Madras, formerly known as Madra, the king of Kekai, Yadumunya, Susurama, Bhamika, along with his sons, and many other rulers submitted to the king Yudhishthira.
When the visitors saw Lord Krishna with his thousands of queens, they were fully satisfied at the sight of such beauty and transcendental opulence. All who were there personally visited Lord Brahma, Lord Balarama and Krishna, and being properly welcomed by them, they began to glorify the members of the Yadu dynasty, especially Krishna and Balaram. Because Ugrasen was the king of the Bhojas, he was considered the chief Yadu, and therefore the visitors specifically addressed him, "Your Majesty Ugrasena, king of the Bhojas." Actually, the Yadus are the only persons within the world who are perfect in all respects. All glories unto you. All glories unto you. The specific condition of your perfection is that you always see Lord Krishna, who is sought by many yogis undergoing severe austerities and penances for great numbers of years. All of you are in direct touch with Lord Krishna at every moment. All the Vedic hymns glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. The Ganges water is considered sanctified because of its being the water used to wash the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. The Vedic literature are nothing but the injunctions of Lord Krishna. The purpose of the study of all the Vedas is to know Krishna. Therefore, the words of Krishna and the message of his pastimes are always purifying. By the influence of the time and circumstances, all the opulences of this world were almost completely wiped out. But since Krishna has appeared on this planet, all auspicious features have again appeared due to the touch of his lotus feet. Because of his presence, all our ambitions and desires are gradually being fulfilled. Your Majesty, King of the Bhojas, you are related with the Yadu dynasty by a matrimonial relationship and by blood relationship also. As a result, you are certainly associating with Lord Krishna and have no difficulty in seeing him or in touching him at any time. Lord Krishna moves with you, talks with you, sits with you, rests with you, and dines with you. The The Yadus appear to be always engaged in worldly affairs, which are considered to be the royal road to hell. But due to the presence of Lord Krishna, the original personality of Godhead in the Yadu, in the Vishnu category, who is omniscient, omnipresent and omnipotent, all of you are factually relieved from all material contamination and are situated in the transcendental position of liberation and Brahman existence.
When Nanda Maharaj and other residents of Vrindavan had heard that Krishna would be present in Kurukshetra, because of the solar eclipse and all that members of the Yadu dynasty would also be there, they had immediately prepared to go there. King Nanda, accompanied by his hired men, had loaded all their necessary paraphernalia on bullock carts, and all of the Vrindavan residents had come to Kurukshetra to see their beloved son Lord Balaram and Lord Krishna. When the cowherdmen of Vrindavan arrived in Kurukshetra, all the members of the Yadu dynasty were most pleased. As soon as they saw the residents of Vrindavan, they stood up to welcome them and appeared to have regained their life. All the Yadus and Vrindavan residents had been very eager to meet, and when they actually came forward and met, they embraced one another to their heart's satisfaction and remained in embrace for a considerable time. As soon as Vasudev's son Nanda Maharaj, Vasudev jumped up and ran over to him and embraced him very affectionately. Vasudev began to narrate his own past history, how he had been imprisoned by King Kansa, how his babies had been killed, how immediately after Krishna's birth he had carried Krishna to the place of Nanda Maharaj, and how Krishna and Balaram had been raised by Nanda Maharaj and his queen Jashoda as their own children. Similarly, Lord Balaram and Krishna also embraced King Nanda and Mother Yashoda, and then they offered their respect unto their lotus feet by bowing down. Because of their feeling affection for Nanda and Yashoda, Lord Krishna and Balaram became choked up, and for a few seconds they could not speak. The most fortunate King Nanda and Mother Yashoda placed their sons on their laps and began to embrace them to their full satisfaction. Because of separation from Krishna and Balaram, King Nanda and Yashoda had been marched in great distress for a very long time. Now, after meeting them and embracing them, all their sufferings were mitigated.
After this, Krishna, Mother Devaki, and Balaram, Mother Rohini, both embraced Mother Yashoda. They used, "Dear Queen Yashoda Devi, you and Nanda Maharaj have been great friends to us, and when we remember you, we are immediately overwhelmed by the thoughts of our friendly activities. We are also in debt to you that even if we were to return your benediction by giving you the opulence of King of Heaven, it would not be enough to repay you for your friendly behavior. We shall never forget your kindly behavior toward us when Krishna and Balaram were born, before they even saw their real father and mother. They were entrusted to your care, and you raised them as your own children, forcing them as a bird take care of their offspring in the nest. You have nicely fed, nourished, and loved them, and have performed many auspicious religious ceremonies for their benefit. Actually, they are not our sons, they belong to you. Nanda Maharaj and you are the real father and mother of Krishna and the Balaram. As long as they were under your care, they had not even pinch of difficulty under your protection. They were completely out of the way of all kinds of fear. This most affection care which you have taken for them is completely benefiting your elevated position. The most noble personality do not discriminate between their own sons and the sons of others. And there cannot be any personality more noble than Nand Maharaj and you.
As far as the gopis of Vrindavana were concerned, from the very beginning of their lives, they didn't know anything beyond Krishna. Krishna and Balaram were their life and soul. The gopis were so attached to Krishna that they could not tolerate not seeing him even momentarily, when their eyelids blinked and impeded their vision. They condemned Brahma, the creator of the body, because he foolishly made eyelids which blinked and checked their seeing Krishna. Because they had been separated from Krishna for so many years, the gopis, having come along with Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda, felt intense ecstasy upon seeing Krishna. No one can even imagine how eager the gopis were to see Krishna again. As soon as Krishna became visible to them, they took him inside their hearts, through their eyes, and embraced him to their full satisfaction. Even though they were embracing Krishna only mentally, they became so ecstatic and overwhelmed with the joy that, for the some time being, they completely forgot themselves. The ecstatic trance they achieved simply by mentally embracing Krishna is impossible to achieve even for great yogis constantly engaged in meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna could understand that the gopis were wrapped in ecstasy by embracing him in their minds, and therefore, since he present in everyone's heart, he reciprocated the embracing from within. Krishna was sitting with Mother Yashoda and his other mothers, Devaki and Rohini. But when the mothers engaged in talking, he took the opportunity and went to a secluded place to meet gopis. As soon as he approached the gopis, the Lord smiled, and after embracing them and inquiring about their welfare, he began to encourage them, saying, "My dear friends, you know that Lord Balarama and I left Vrindavan just to please our relatives and family members. Thus we were long engaged in fighting with our enemies and were obliged to forget you, who were so much attached to me in love and affection. I can understand that I have been ungrateful to you, but still I know that you are faithful to me. May I inquire if you have been thinking of us? Although we had to leave you behind, my dear gopis, do you now dislike remembering me and considering me to have been ungrateful to you? Do you take my misbehavior with you very seriously?"
After all, you should know that it was not my intention to leave you. Our separation was ordained by Providence, who after all is the supreme controller and does as he desires. He causes the intermingling of different portions and again disperses them as he desires. Sometimes we see that a strong wind will mingle together clouds, atomic particles of dust, of broken pieces of cotton, and after the strong wind subsides, all the clouds, particles of dust, and pieces of cotton are again separated, scattered in different places. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is creator of everything. The object we see are different manifestations of His energy. By His supreme will, we are sometimes united and sometimes separated. We can therefore conclude that ultimately we are absolutely dependent on His will. Fortunately, you have developed loving affection for me, which is the only way to achieve the transcendental position of association with me. Any living entity who develops such an loud devotional affection for me certainly at the end goes back home, back to Godhead. In other words, an loud devotional service and affection for me are the cause of supreme liberation.
My dear gopis friends, you may know from me that it is my energy only which are acting everywhere. Take for example an earthen pot. It is nothing but a combination of earth, water, air, fire and sky. It is always so same physically composition, whether it is beginning during the exchange or after it analyzation. When it is created, the earthen pot is made of earth, water, fire, air and sky. While it remains, it is the same in the composition, and when it is broken and annihilated, it is different ingredients are concerned in a different parts of the material energy. Similarly, at the creation of this cosmos manifestation, during the maintenance and after dissolution, everything but a different manifestation of my energy. And because the energy is not separated from me, it is to be concluded that I am exacting in everything. In the same way, the body of a living being is nothing but a composition of 5 elements, and the living entity embodied in the material condition is also part and parcel of me. The living entity is imprisoned in the material condition of account of his false conception of himself as the supreme enjoyer. The false ego of the living entity is the cause of imprisonment in the material exchange. As far as the absolute truth, I am the transcendental to the all living entity as well as his material embodiment. The two energies, material and the spiritual, both act under my supreme control. My dear gopis, I request that instead of being offended, you try to accept everything with the philosophical attitude. Then you will understand that you are always with me, and that there is no cause of lamentation in our being separated from one and another.
This important instruction by the Lord Krishna to the gopis can be utilized by all devotees engaged in Krishna's consciousness. The whole philosophy is considered on the basis of inconceivable simultaneous oneness and difference. In the Bhagavad-Gita, the Lord says that He is present everywhere in His impersonal picture. Everything exists in Him, but still He is not personally present everywhere. The cosmic manifestation is nothing but a display of Krishna's energy, and because the energy is not different from the energetic, nothing is different from Krishna. When this absolute consciousness, Krishna consciousness, is absent, we are separated from Krishna. But fortunately, if this Krishna consciousness is present, then we are not separated from Krishna. The process of devotional service is the revival of Krishna consciousness, and if the devotee is fortunate enough to understand that the material energy is not separate from Krishna, then he can utilize the material energy and its products in the service of the Lord. But in the absence of Krishna consciousness, the forgetful living entity, although part and parcel of Krishna, falsely puts himself in the position of enjoyer of the material world, and being thus implicated in the material entanglement, is forced by the material energy to continue his material existence. This is confirmed in Bhagavad-Gita. Although a living entity is forced to act by the material energy, he falsely thinks that he is the all in all and supreme enjoyer. If the devotee knows perfectly that the Archa Vigraha or the devotee or the deity form of the Lord Krishna in the temple is exactly the same Satchit Ananda Vigraha as Krishna himself, then his service to the temple deity becomes direct service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly, the temple itself, the temple paraphernalia and the food offered to the deity are also not separate from Krishna. One has to follow the rules and regulations prescribed by the acharyas, and thus under the superior guidance Krishna realization is fully possible even in this material existence.
The gopis, having been instructed by Krishna in this philosophy of simultaneous oneness and difference, remained always in Krishna consciousness and thus became liberated from all material contamination. The consciousness of living entity who falsely presents himself as the enjoyer of the material world is called Jiva Kosha. which means imprisonment by the false ego. Not only the gopis but anyone who follows these instructions of Krishna is immediately freed from all the jiva kosha. Imprisonment. A person in full Krishna consciousness is always liberated from false egoism. He utilizes everything for Krishna's service and is not at any time separated from Krishna. The gopis therefore prayed to Krishna, "Dear Krishna, for your navel emanated the original lotus flower which is the birthright of Brahma, the creator. No one can estimate your glories of your opulence, which therefore remain always masterly even to the highest thoughtful men, the masters of all yogic power. However, the conditioned soul fallen in the dark while of this material existence can very easily take shelter of your lotus feet. Thus, his deliverance is guaranteed."
The gopis continued, "Dear Krishna, we are always busy in our family affairs. We therefore request that you remain within our heart as the rising sun. That will be your greatest benediction." The gopis are always liberated soul because they are fully in Krishna consciousness. They only pretended to be engaged in household affairs in Vrindavan. Because of their separation from Krishna, he might have asked them to return with him to his capital city Dwarka. But the inhabitants of Vrindavan, the gopis, were not interested in the idea of going with Krishna to Dwarka. They wanted to remain busy in Vrindavan and thus feel the presence of Krishna in every step of their lives. They immediately invited Krishna to come back to Vrindavan. Thus transcendent emotion excited of the gopis in the base of principle of Lord Chaitanya teaching. The Rath Yatra festival observed by Lord Chaitanya is the emotion process of taking Krishna back to Vrindavan. Srimati Radharani refused to go to Krishna to Dwarka to enjoy his company in the atmosphere of royal opulences, for she wanted to enjoy his company in the original Vrindavan atmosphere. Lord Krishna, being profoundly attached to the gopis, never goes away from Vrindavan, and thus gopis and the other residents of Vrindavan remain fully satisfied in Krishna consciousness. Thus end the Bhakti-Vedanta purport of 82nd chapter of Krishna. Lord Krishna and Balaram meets the inhabitants of Vrindavan. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति-वेदांत स्वामी इति नामिने नामस्ते सरस्वती देवं गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी भातदेशिति नामिने। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तबिंदा। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। We offer humble obeisances, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Vancha kalpita rupi kripa sindhu evacha patitana pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All glories to assembled devotees. Hare Krishna.